Alright, so, let me hop on my second Zoom. Alrighty, so questions. So some of you may have heard there's a campaign called Shut Down STEM, which is asking people to boycott everything STEM related tomorrow. Except apparently COVID-19 research, which is exempt. So I am planning to teach as usual because personally I believe education is one of the keys to getting out of this madness that the world has gotten itself into, and trying to correct some of these injustices that have persisted for so long. But I will be going through kind of start to finish talking about Android development and stuff. It's not something that will be on the exam, so if you feel like you want to take part in this action and boycott STEM tomorrow, right, you won't be missing anything in class. That'll be on the exam, and of course, the lectures will be recorded and posted, so do what feels right to you. But I am planning to teach both sections as usual and have my office hours as usual. So, all right. Any questions on anything? PA5, stuff we've been talking about. Otherwise, I want to dig back into the URL class and look at some of the things we can do with Java and net access. Alright, so let's make a project. I'm going to call it rain because it's raining and it's beautiful out there. And let's make this a graphical thing, so I'll make a JFrame. And I'll just call it main. And I want to play with the URL class, right? So I'm going to put this stuff in my window over here. I'm gonna pop a button in here. Okay, so first I'm gonna do an absolute layout. I'm gonna take a button and pop it over here, and I'm gonna call this go. And I'm just gonna use this button to activate some code. So I'll double click to get into my button handler. And so let's play with the URL class. So URL page, and I'm going to construct this from Astronomy Picture of the Day, which is a nice website. And I'm going to make my URL object a class variable. And I'll import it and I'll put it all in try-catch block. Alright, so let's look again at URL. And the method I want to look at first is OpenStream, which will return an input stream. We haven't really talked about streams yet. There's whole lectures we could give on just the input-output aspects that are available in Java. We've really just worked with using scanners for input and print writers for output. And that's sufficient for everything we've had to do, including dealing with sockets. But there are, entire hierarchies of buffered and unbuffered streams and readers and writers and all kinds of other stuff. And I invite you and encourage you to dig into those, but I'm not going to go through them in this class. But it basically has to do with, do you want to input a double precision floating point number and have it translated for you, or do you want to just read raw bits and save them somewhere, right? And that's sort of two extremes between, say, a scanner and a very low-level stream. There's also differences in how things are buffered. When you write to an output area, do you want it to be written immediately, or do you want it to be buffered up until you flush it? And so you have buffered and unbuffered output streams and so on. So we're not going to worry about what an input stream is. We're just going to know that we can get one from our URL, right? And an input stream can get us all of these things. But we can use an input stream to construct a scanner, and that's really what's most exciting to us at this moment. So let's make a scanner. So let's make a new scanner on page dot, and after talking about all that, I forgot it was called input stream. Okay, so I'll define a scanner up here. And I'll import it. Check my spelling. OpenStream. Alright, so we're constructing a page, which is a URL, with a URL as a constructor argument. We're using that to get an input stream. We're using that to construct a scanner, and now let's just read from that scanner. Alright, so open a scanner, and then we'll go into a loop while there's another line available. We'll read that line and print it out, and then when we're done with the input, we'll close the scanner just to be polite. And that's our whole code. So let's go ahead and run this. And I'm going to click on the Go button, and what you see down here is a bunch of output. And it starts with doc-type HTML, HTML head, astronomy picture of the day. And it goes from there. And this is, if you go to APOD NASA Gov, and you hit a Control-U, you see the raw HTML of this page, right? And that's what we're getting from our output. Yeah, this does help, but it's great to do things barehanded, right? It's nice to see the easy way to do it for future reference, though. So this is one way we can pull material from a web page, right? And we could do this a variety of ways. We could go lower level, and we could create a socket connection to the web server, right? We could talk to port 8080 or 80 or wherever the web server is, and we could exchange, information with the web browser. We could say get this page, and if it's a secure connection like HTTPS, right, we need to do some handshaking to authenticate what's being sent to us. But the URL class bundles all of that up for us, right? Power of objects, and just gives us, the bare HTML that constitutes that web page. Alright, so URL is useful for pulling this information down, and we can put other things in here besides just HTTPS, right? We can we can access other kinds of resources, images and text files and so on and so forth. Now, if we wrote something to interpret this, we could use it to produce this kind of page, right? Something with a bold, large header up here and a hyperlink and some text and a date and then a nice picture, and so on and so forth. Let's see, can you show how to strip a line out of the HTML? What do you mean by strip a line out? Do you mean just pull out the text, or? Because these are just strings now, right? Each of these is a string named temp. This is scraping it, actually, right? I mean, normally when you talk about scraping a web page, we're talking about just kind of going and pulling the information out of it. And if we were looking for example, just all the images, right, we could take each string and search it to see if it contains a JPEG, right? So, so there's a string method called indexOf, which tells us where a string occurs within a specified string and returns -1 if the string's not found. So we could do something like this. Alright, so if we do this and we run it and we click go, it gives us just a list of all the JPEGs that are found on that web page, including apparently Scottish fold cat laying on lap, happily cute cat sleeping on the lap with a girl and a happy cat on the lap, and in the embrace of a woman.jpg. So that's apparently a picture somewhere on here. I know I want to see that. Huh. Interesting. And so Joseph says, yeah, there's a JSoup library specifically for this. And yeah, so there's other packages that are available that will do things like you know, interpret the HTML for you, or you know, pull out all the hyperlinks, or remove the tags or things like that. I'm gonna have to pull this up later and see what this looks like. And it's interesting sometimes to go look at source code for web pages, because you find Easter eggs sometimes. I don't know if that's what this is or not. But I was looking at some Java source code the other day, and I was curious about one of the authors, and I pulled up their web page, and it was like a 1980s vintage web page, even though this person works for Microsoft and, you know, wrote part of Java and so on. But you look at their source code, and there's all kinds of interesting links in there that are commented out that led to some cool things. I'll bite. It's NASA. It can't be too inappropriate, right? Hey, there we go. That's pretty good. Alright, so if we were to interpret this HTML, right, we could display a web page. Well, guess what? There's support for that in the Java library already. So I'm going to do the following. I'm going to hop in here, and I'm going to add a scroll pane. So not a scroll bar, I want a scroll pane. Let me make this bigger. Where's my scroll pane? Got police activity outside my window right now. But you seems to be chill. Alright, so I'm going to take a J scroll pane and drop it in here. And a scroll pane is a container that you can put other things into, but it will, when appropriate, add scroll bars to the viewing of those other things. So in this case, inside the scroll pane, I'm going to add an editor pane, or a J editor pane. So let me find that. J editor pane. Well, first I'm going to make my scroll pane bigger. Alright, and inside here I'm going to add a J editor pane, and I'll just drop it right here. Alright, so I'm going to go back to my Go button, and instead of opening up a stream from this, I'm going to do the following. Alright, I've broken my code again. Window Builder is a little fragile. If you get syntax errors, sometimes it'll stop it from displaying this kind of thing. This is apparently happening now. Alright. Let's try this again. So there's something in my code that is messing with Window Builder and its attempt to display. So let me clean this up. Let me just get rid of that. Okay, so that, no, that's still broken. Alright, I'm just going to go with the source code then. All I wanted to do was rename my editor pane to something reasonable, but I'm just going to do it in here. So, J editor pane, I'll just call it editor pane. All right, so in my Go button, I'm going to open my URL, and then I'm going to say Editor Pane.setPage, and I'll put in my URL object. And my Editor Pane is going to be a JEditor Pane. Don't need my scanner anymore. Alright, so this is the usual business of constructing the Editor Pane here inside main's constructor, but declaring that object itself outside so that I have access to it elsewhere, for example, in the Go button code. So after all of that, I basically have two lines of code. I'm constructing a URL object using, URL for the astronomy picture of the day, and then I'm saying take my Editor Pane, call the setPage method, and I'm passing it that page. So let's run this, and let's hit the Go button, and guess what? I've got my astronomy picture of the day. And I didn't make it resizable, so my poor little scroll pane is fixed size, right? But I could make that bigger. And yeah, that's pretty cool, I think, too. So let's make the scroll pane bigger. Alright, so there's our apod. So that's a quick web page, but none of these things are clickable. They look like clickable links, but they're not. So how do we make it so we can click on links? Well, we have to add one more line of code, which is after the Editor Pane. We have to set it to be non-editable. And now if I run this, right, I can actually hover over these things and I get, a change in my cursor the way we normally do. But clicking them still doesn't do anything. But it's at least noticing that I'm sitting over a hyperlink. So that's moving in the right direction. Alright, let's see if our design window will work again. I really hope it does. Alright, something fixed it. So let's go to our scroll pane. I'm going to right click, I'm going to say add event handler, and the handler I'm going to add is hyperlink update. And that's going to bring me down here to a hyperlink listener. And let's just put a print message in here. Let's just print out that we're in this hyperlink update method, and let's print out the argument that's been passed to us. So we'll run this code. I should just make this window bigger. And we'll say go, and there's our web page, and I can hover over this, and you see that by hovering over it, I got a call to my hyperlink update method. And if I come down here, there's a whole bunch of information stored in here, including the URL that it refers to, somewhere in here. Alright, and actually I forgot to do one thing, so let's do this again. So when we hover, we get an event. When we click, we also get another event. And there's information in here which will discriminate whether we were hovering or clicking. And I don't know which information is in there, but I can pull the documentation on a hyperlink event. Hyperlink listener gets us to a hyperlink event, and it has a source field, and we can get event type, and get event type will tell us what type of event this was, which returns hyperlink event type, which can be activated, entered, or exited. So we can tell when we've moved the mouse over a link, when we've moved it away from a link, or when we've actually clicked on the link, or activated it with a space bar or whatever. And any of those will cause this method to be called, and we can use arg0 to find out what kind of event happens. So let's take advantage of that. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to say if arg0.get event type equals hyperlink event type activated. It's got to be all uppercase. All right. So what's going on in just this one statement here, right? arg0 was passed to the hyperlink update method. We can call the get event type method, which returns hyperlink event type, and we can take the static field called activated in the event type in the hyperlink event, right? So these are statics used to define constants. Right, so this is a static, and if it's activated, so let's do a print here. And what we're going to do is arg0 dot, well, what is arg0? It's a hyperlink event. Let's go back and look at that. So there's a method called getURL, which will tell us the URL that the link refers to. Alright, so we'll call arg0.getURL, and let's print that out. Alright, there's our page. Here's a link. Let me click on it, and there's the link that the page of that link refers to. I can click on this person, and there's a link to their page. I can click on human eye, and there's a link to opticalphysics.com, and so on and so forth. Alright, and I can click on the picture, and there's a link to the picture. So we can pull this information out of the URL. So what do we need to do to actually make a web page? Let's just load that into our current web page when it's clicked. Okay, so we'll put the word click in front of our message, and then what do we call this? An editor pane. Editor pane dot set page arg0 dot get URL. And that just loads this new page. This has to go in a try-catch block. Alright, so what have we done? When we hit the go button, we create a URL on this particular page. We set the editor pane to that. We set editable to false so we can click on links. And then when you actually click on a link, right, this method will be called. We confirm that the action that brought us here was clicking. We'll print out a message to tell us that we clicked it, and then we'll say set the new page on the editor pane to be whatever that URL is. And run this, hit the go button, and we've got a rudimentary web browser. And we can get lost in all kinds of rabbit holes now. So that's pretty dang easy, right? There was a lot of talking involved in all of that, and a lot of looking things up, but really, you know, a handful of lines to get a rudimentary web browser up and running. And it's because, you know, we have these classes like URL and hyperlink event that do, you know, all the gory details for us. We have this Editor Pane that knows how to interpret HTML and display it accordingly, and knows how to interface with this event handling system so that when you interact with a link, you can call methods and so on and so forth. Alright, so what's the main feature our web browser is missing other than, you know, advertising on the side? What would we like to add to this? URL bar, yeah, it would be nice to be able to type in a URL. And a hit count, that would be cool. And an ad block, yep. I was thinking of a back button, because I think what I always do when I'm trying to find something on the web is I go down rabbit holes, right? I start following a link to another link to another link, and now I'm reading about aliens, you know, invading our public transit system or something. And then I have to go back to where I was originally looking, which was, you know, how do you do such and such? So I don't know how you would wire up Flash for this. I'll admit, I really do not understand Flash. When it first came out, it was kind of, you know, considered to be unstable / dangerous. and I just never really got into it. And occasionally I really wanted to do something and said you have to install Flash, so I'd say okay, I'll install Flash. And every few months someone would say it was going away, and it was like okay, but I don't actually know how it interacts with a web page. But that would be interesting to dig into, and see what it takes to do that. Same with things like JavaScript and some of these fancier things like Bootstrap and so on and so forth. And I don't know what version of the web this Editor Pane is, capable of dealing with. But also keep in mind I'm using Java 8 right now, which is like really old, and we're up to I think Java 14. So this is one of those things that might change significantly from version to version. So let's add a back button. We'll just do the mysterious arrow there. So let's go to the prior page. Well, how the heck are we going to do that? What do we have to do if we want to be able to hit a button and go back to the page we were at before? And the answer is probably something we talked about like in February. Save the past URL. Make a stack of URLs. There we go. Use a stack, right? This was one of our examples when we first talked about stacks in 222, was browsing the web and going forward, 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 and then hitting the back button to go back. Well, the back button basically just pops off your stack. So we can do something like this, right? Bring up a page, click on a link. So here's page 1. And this is a link for page 2, so now we bring up page 2 and we click on a link for page 3, and that brings up page 3. And now we want to hit the back button. Well, we should go back to the page immediately before. And the way that we do that should be such that if we were to hit the back button again, we would go to page 1. But if from here we click on some other link to come to page 4, and then we click the back button there, that should bring us to page 2, and then if we click the back button it should still bring us back to page 1. And then if we hit the back button it should blow up and throw up all over our screen. So that's a stack, right? And the idea is each time we go to a new page we're going to push the previous page onto the stack, and when we hit the back button we'll just pop off the top of the stack and use that as the page we're going back to. Well, so an easy way to do stacks in Java is to use a linked list, right? So a linked list, normally when you say add, it appends to the end of the list, and when you say get, it returns, we can say get last and get the last element of the list. So I'm going to do add, and I'm going to do get last. Alright, so let's make a linked list. And what kind of linked list do we want? What sorts of things do we want to put into our list? What kind of object? And be as lazy as you can imagine here. Rectangles, that's always the answer, right? Or a mathematical induction. Let's make a linked list of URLs. Right? Why? Why not? Because linked list URL, what should we call this? History. Equals new linked list. So we'll import this. Alright. And bingo, I've got a linked list of URLs, right? I don't even know what a URL looks like. I know it has a method I can call called getPage, right? Or getURL, right? But I don't know anything else about a URL except that I know that I can get them from my argument on my hyperlink listener. So I'm just going to make like a linked list of those. I'm going to initialize it to be an empty linked list up here, right? And so what should we do? When we click on a link, let's do the following. Well, we're starting off with this original page, right? Let's start off by putting that on our stack. So let's do history dot add page. This is the first thing on our stack. And when we go to a new page, we'll say click, we'll set the page, and we'll just push that onto our stack. So r0.getURL. So this is not exactly what I want. Alright, I'm doing this a little goofy, but we only got 5 minutes, so I'm not going to overthink it. So what I'm doing is my stack is, you know, the page that I'm currently sitting on. When I go to a new page, this is my current page. So the top of the stack always has my current page. So when I hit the back button, what do I want to do? I want to remove this from the stack and then go to this page. Agreed? So I'm going to remove this from the stack and go to this page. So I'm going to use get last to see an element. I'm going to use remove last to remove an element. Alright, so we'll take one shot at this. So each time we click on a link, we'll push that onto the top of the stack. So we need to wire up our back button now. Alright, so go to the prior page. So URL new page equals history dot So let's remove the current page from the stack. Let's see what the new last page is, and let's set that to our current page. So that's new page, and let's just do editor pane dot set page new page. And this has to go in a try catch. Alright, so discover the cosmos. Let's go to the atmospheric ring of Venus. Let's go to Pete Lawrence's page. And then let's go back, and we're back to that one. And let's go to Mercury across the face. And let's go back to that one, and let's go back to our archive, and let's go back to our very first page. So we got a web browser going, and we can blow it up horribly by going back before the first page. And you know, we just need to put something in here before we try to remove from the stack. We need to make sure the stack's not empty, right? So that we know if we're trying to go back to a page that hasn't been saved. But that's the basic setup, right? And so adding the history feature is really just, you know, make a linked list. When you click, add the page to the URL. When you hit the back button, remove a page from the history linked list. So yeah, if you wanted to add a URL bar, right, make a text field, and when you hit enter in there, or when you click, you know, the button at the side of it, take that and use it to construct a new URL, and then Editor Pane dot load page, and give it that page, that URL. If you want the whole thing to be resizable, you can do a resize event on the J-frame, and when the J-frame changes size, you can call set bounds on your scroll pane and set the bounds to be whatever the height and width are of the J-frame, right? So all this stuff goes together really naturally. It's a really sort of Tinker Toy or Lego kind of programming model, which is really fun. All right. So tomorrow I want to look at Android just as another example of an integrated environment and doing some of these event-driven programming things. So we'll play around with that tomorrow. Thursday we'll take a quick look at some Java source code, and then we'll do some review for the final exam Thursday and Friday. All right. Have a good one. I will catch you later.